Thank you, Program Director. Dini bulise nonke, Speaker, Deputy President. As we gather here today to engage in discussions about the future of our nation's governance, it is our strong belief as the ATM that the discussions about the future of our nation's governance must be based on principle, respect, and inclusiveness. Having listened to the ANC and the DA and read the documents for this afternoon's discussion, as the ATM, we stand before you with deep frustration at the common view amongst the biggest parties on why some coalition governments fail and their proposals to the effect, which are largely exclusive and sideline the so-called smaller parties. It is time we stop beating around the bush and address the glaring instabilities that have plagued our municipalities that are governed through a coalition. The blame for the instabilities in coalition governance cannot be placed on the so-called smaller parties. The real culprits for these disruptions have been the so-called bigger parties who have displayed a history of bullying coalition partners, enticing them with money and ultimately destabilizing their coalitions. The so-called smaller parties have, for the most part, maintained a record of stability with isolated incidents that should not overshadow their dedication to public service. Will not participate as the ATM in entrenching of a wrong perception that the failure of coalitions is a result of smaller parties. Will not allow such scapegoating, which is designed to influence the citizens against voting for the so-called smaller parties. To address these issues and promote stability in government, we need to advance the spirit of cooperation and putting the interest of the people ahead of the parties. The two biggest parties in this dialogue are foreign to that concept, hence them using the smaller parties as a scapegoat for their own self-centered politics. Additionally, the concept of imposing a threshold for participating in a coalition is nonsensical. The absence of a clear winner signifies voter dissent and indecision, calling for inclusive negotiations rather than exclusions. We must come together and work towards solutions that represent the diverse views of our nation. No one should seek power through the back door. If a party gets below 50%, they've lost the election, and the new government will be formed by a number of parties that have all lost the election. So to say that a party that has the most votes, even if they fall shy of the 50%, must be the ones to lead the coalition is ridiculous, to say the least. The Constitution allows for any member of parliament to be elected a president of the republic, whether they belong to a party with 1 seat or 300 seats, as long as a person is a member of parliament. These proposals of a threshold are a clear violation of Section 86 of the Constitution, and they are thus unconstitutional and are driven by a desperate attempt to hold on to power. The two biggest parties are afraid of the prospect of losing power and have gone as far as trying to undermine the Constitution in order to achieve their selfish desires. Anyway, this threshold proposal is not legally permissible without a constitutional amendment. And even to remotely suggest that we need to amend the Constitution so that the bigger parties can hold on to power is dangerous and must be rejected in the strongest of terms. Coalitions formed solely for expediency without shared programs or ideological convergence are bound to be plagued by internal conflict, rendering them ineffective. Let us not be fooled by mere declarations of cooperation between the top parties. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Instead, we must prioritize policy and ideological similarities to address pressing issues such as land, crime, the economy, and the establishment of the state bank. At this juncture, self-interest must be set aside as we prioritize the welfare of our people. We must forge a path that serves the greater good and ensures a prosperous future for all South Africans. Many of the proposals shared today by the so-called big parties have strayed away from constitutional principles. There is also the issue of several political parties undertaking a study tour on coalitions in Europe to learn about coalition governments. There are 14 parties in parliament. That study tour excluded most of the members or most of the parties that are in parliament. Now you want to use that document, which is exclusionary in nature, to influence a dialogue on coalitions here in South Africa. See, ATM asivumelani nalonto. While we can learn from experiences from elsewhere, it is crucial that we it is crucial not to rely on solutions tailored for different contexts. We need to create a unique and tailored solutions that considers our nation's specific circumstances. We are not Europeans, and our realities are not European. Any solution for stability in coalition must be based on the principle and inclusiveness. The truth is the so-called bigger parties have already concluded on a grand coalition for 2024 and want us now to legitimize the process which is meant to pave the way for that national grand coalition next year. It is of course premature to discuss 2024 coalition partners, yet this process is crafted to legitimize a plan to form a government by the two biggest parties next year, even though they do not agree on many policies, which is something that will be a recipe for disaster for the average South African. Elections are about a mandate. No party here has received a mandate for 2024. Why should we bust our heads 9 months before the elections when we should wait for a mandate first? Some parties after 2024 think they will be big parties, whereas they will not be big parties. As that was not bad enough, the DA went on to say we need to limit the votes of no confidence that should be called. What democratic system is that? Calling for a vote of no confidence is a constitutional right which is enshrined in Section 102 of the Constitution. Parties cannot be sidelined from forming a coalition government, then told they will not have a way to hold that government accountable if it goes astray. Now parties are being stripped of the opportunity to utilize the right to call for a vote of no confidence, a right that the main opposition utilized several times in the previous parliament. As a final thought, it is also disheartening that there are parties that are sidelined for this dialogue, despite some of them being former members of the National Assembly. Yet parties that have not even contested a single election have been invited. What informed this decision? This sort of bias sends us backwards. It is unnecessary and does not assist in paving a principled way forward. As the ATM, we emphatically reject this dialogue. We are an elected party. We are not in parliament by the invitation of anyone. What we've been asked to do here today, it is to legitimize the process that takes away governance from the Constitution. This gathering undermines and excludes indigenous faith groups, parties in parliament. Therefore, as the ATM, based on this submission, asingeni lento yale dialogue. Thank you.
Can we please move to the next presentation from